He gave you the resources, the people, the talents, all of the things in your church to do.
Hey, Dan. How's it going?
Going
I've got
great.
a question for you today. You ready?
All right.
What is the last thing you Googled? Now, I'm going to caveat this one. It can't be for work.
Okay. Last thing I Googled. I'm going to say this because I don't actually know, but I know that very recently I had to Google the spelling of a word. I even had to voice say it into it, actually, which would have just told me the spelling, but I didn't know how to spell it. And I felt like an idiot.
I need to know what the word was.
Yeah, that's the thing is I kind of forgot what it is. Actually, I do
Even
Google
better.
it, but this was 2 days ago. But this is the thing that came to my mind is I'm like, yeah, it was kind of so I guess it actually was for work. But it kind of falls in the not work thing because it was a word I knew I needed to know and I didn't know how to spell it.
Well, if you think of it, you just shout it out. Today, we're talking about keeping every dollar on mission and how to maximize your church's impact. We sat down with Mark DeYmaz, who is the leader of the Church Economists, and Greg Daley, our founder and visionary. So we hope you guys enjoyed this episode.
Here we go. Every dollar that your church spent, let me just start that over. Every dollar that your church spends is either fueling your mission or distracting from it. The question isn't if your money is making an impact, but the question is it making the right impact? That's the impact that will best fuel the mission that God has called your church to. Most churches spend their money on good things, but few have the discipline to focus their dollars on the best things. Today, we're going to be diving into how to be intentional with every dollar so your church doesn't just survive. It multiplies the impact in the community and fuels the mission that God has given your church. Jesus taught that good stewardship is getting the maximum return on dollars entrusted to you, not in a financial sense, but in a kingdom sense. And so we're going to dive into what that looks like and how to maximize your church's impact. So Greg, your parable, we say keep every dollar on mission. What does that actually mean for a pastor or church leader? And why does that matter so much to you and to Parable?
Yeah, most pastors that we work with that are in thriving churches have a great mission and a great vision that they're headed towards. And that great mission and vision, they can articulate it very well with their mouth. It's very linked to their heart because you don't talk to a pastor long before you know, they're not in it for the money. They're in it for the kingdom and the mission. They really feel called of God to do this thing. But when it comes down to the finance piece and the budget and all of the are your dollars on that same mission, that's where the disconnect happens. We see this, we often see this big gap. If we look at the budget, which is run by finance people, typically not the visionary people, they don't often link together. And that piece ends up, the byproduct of that is that not every dollar is spent on your mission. Some dollars are just spent. Some dollars fall in the cracks of your car or your couch, right? And they're just gone. And at the end of the month, you're like, where did it all go? Because we wanted to do these 3 things, but we didn't get to do them. And we love that. That's why it's so important to me, because if we can align those 3 things, all of a sudden that church is really cranking towards their kingdom mission.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Mark, you've seen churches of all shapes and sizes. Why do you think that so many start with these big dreams, but then they struggle to keep that outward focus as they grow, and they struggle to keep their dollars going towards mission?
Yeah, Dan, a couple of things come to my mind. First of all, people are very aspirational, and they're not necessarily very financial or practical or whatever. I like to say there's a fine line between faith and foolishness. And I have certainly seen a lot of foolishness in the American church and in the pastorate when it comes to economics, financial realities. We can't just say God will provide. He doesn't do that. That's not how it works. In terms of this, sure, God can provide. Sometimes he does provide. Many times he provides, but we have to hustle. We have to be intentional as well. You brought up the parable in part of the good, the good steward, right? You gave me 5, here's your 5, I made you 5. That didn't just happen, right? That person got after it. You gave me 2, I made you 2. Again, there was intentionality. I like to say one guy sat on his asset, right? One guy sat on his asset and hoped for the best. Pastors, that doesn't work. You can't do that. Same way with sharing the gospel. We don't just sit in this room, for instance, and pray, oh, I hope people come to know Jesus. We think about it. We get after it. We're intentional. And so with all that in mind, that's how pastors have to be. Separate foolishness from faith. Faith requires intentionality for us to go after it, to understand certain things and to chase it. And there's nothing at all wrong with that and everything right about that. That is being intentional as a good steward of the assets you've been given. Aspirational goals are fine, but there are very practical realities when it comes to funding and finance in the 21st century. And it's important that pastors not only lead with the spiritual side, but again, engage others who understand these things to partner with them to address the practical and financial realities of the 21st.
Wow, that's really good. Thanks, Mark. Greg, we're talking about churches. They get off track with their finances. They don't keep their finances tracking with the mission. What are some of the patterns that you see that keep churches from keeping their dollars being spent on mission?
I mean, we see a lot with some churches. Just budget in general is a bad word or a necessary evil. And when it's a necessary evil, it's the last thing you want to do, right? It's the thing that's over there. And we know we got to do it because we're supposed to be good stewards and financial, we have a fiduciary responsibility to do it, rather than seeing that budget as a tool. So telling your budget is just a tool to tell your dollars where they need to go, not accidentally lose those dollars. Another thing that I see is that their budgets maybe are built on a last year's spending model, not actually what their priorities are and what they, leading again with that vision and mission, and then going, what's the best budget to support that? Even if we don't yet have it. I mean, what Mark was saying, I completely agree with. God just doesn't, most of the time, God doesn't just give you $1 million and say, I hope you spend it well. But oftentimes, if you have big vision for something and you're like, hey, we don't have it yet, but if we did, this is what we would do. It's amazing at how God does sometimes drop those things in. And so I think basing it simply off of last year's spending isn't doing the due diligence of what we talked about earlier, which is stopping something maybe and not, rather than just starting things. The only other thing I might add to that is, and it kind of goes along with it, but saying yes to the good things rather than looking at really what can be great. What can our church be the best at in this, rather than just what can we do good? Like if VBS is not your thing, just because every other church does VBS, let them do the VBS and you do the thing that God put in. Saying yes to the good things rather than looking at really what can be great. What can our church be the best at in this, rather than just what can we do good? Like if VBS is not your thing, just because every other church does VBS, let them do the VBS and you do the thing that God put in. If your building's not set up for VBS, don't try to pull it off and have an awkward VBS. Do what God has put in your church to do.
That's so good. And Greg, so if there's a pastor listening that says, yes, I want to do this, I want to make a change, what's a first step that they can do to start getting their dollars aligned with mission?
Well, I mean, I kind of teed it up to myself, I guess, in the last question, but budget, don't think of it as a 4-letter word or a curse word or part of the curse, but think of it as like part of the garden, that it was how God designed it to be. If we can tell our money where it's supposed to go, that means all the priorities and the mission and the vision that God's birthing in your heart get dollars towards it. Involve a team, involve a team and empower that team. There are people out there with the skills in the things that you think maybe you're not good at it and also you don't love it. That category, if you can put that into somebody else's box that does love it and are good at it, like now you get to maximize the potential of what that budget could be. And if you need help with that, obviously we have some toolkits and some things that can help you along that budgeting journey to kind of change the mindset that you have about it.
That's great. Yeah. And as Greg said, we have a comprehensive budgeting toolkit. It's going to give you process, help you think through different questions that you need to do to actually set a budget that's aligned with your mission, give you all the tools that you need, spreadsheets, that kind of stuff to walk you through that process. That's something that we give to you, that you're able to walk through that process. We do help a lot of churches every year with their budget. And so if you do need help, we can also help you walk you through that process. but the tools are available to you for free either way with that. So thank you for joining us. We've got one more really exciting session to go. This one, we've really kind of looked at how do we make sure we're not spending the dollars that God has entrusted us in a way that doesn't align with our mission. The next one, we're going to talk about how do we generate more income for the church? How do we get creative with that in a way that's going to fuel mission and also fund that mission?